So, few shows from my childhood had a bigger impact and left a greater impression on me than Avatar: The Last Airbender did. It's definitely one of those shows that I liked as a kid, but didn't realize just how great it was until I rewatched it as an adult. The characters, the world building, the action, the music, the animation, the story arcs, the life lessons, the penguin sledding.
Man, this some old bullshit.
It's one of those rare one-in-a-million type of shows where there just doesn't seem to be any weak spots. There's so much to talk about with this show that the hardest part of making a video is figuring out what I wanted to talk about the most. When I really thought about my favorite aspects of the show, I remembered when the show truly hooked me as a kid, and I remembered what I considered to be the best story arc in the series. Ba Sing Se changed everything. And I don't mean it changed everything in the show. I mean, it changed everything for me as a viewer, and I'm sure a lot of other kids at the time as well. To explain what I mean by that, I have to explain more about what the Ba Sing Se arc is. Let's go all the way back to the very start of the series with Book 1. Quick side note, I always really f***ed with how they called the seasons books instead of seasons because it added to the whole epic journey vibe that the show always tried to get across. But anyway, Book 1 is the introduction to the story and the world of Avatar, and as far as introductions go, it's a pretty damn good introduction. I'd say Book 1 is my least favorite of the three, but it still had some great moments, great episodes, and really dope storytelling. Not to mention that ending. God damn, that was epic. But I always remember watching Book 1 as a kid, and even though I liked it and was down to see more, watching Avatar: The Last Airbender didn't feel much different from watching SpongeBob or Fairly OddParents or Teen Titans or Pokemon or any other cartoon that happened to be on TV at the time. It didn't really feel special. Yeah. Book 2 changed all that. Book 2 of Avatar: The Last Airbender might still, to this day, be the best season of Avatar: The Last Airbender ever. Book 3 is amazing too, and don't sleep on Book 1 or Book 3 of Legend of Korra either, but there's something about Book 2 of Aang's journey that just seems to check every possible box for me. I originally wanted this video to cover the entirety of Book 2, but what I quickly realized while rewatching it is that Book 2 actually starts a little slow. The first 5 or so episodes feel less like a news story and more like a carryover from Season 1. It's not until the gang meet Toph in the Blind Bandit episode that things really start to pick up, in my opinion. Book 2 introduces us to so many new and crucially important story elements and characters, the biggest being Toph, the new hero, and Azula, the new villain. The heroes are trying to save what little remains of the Earth Kingdom from the Fire Nation's grasp, and Azula has taken up the charge in Zuko's place to hunt down the Avatar. While that plays out, Zuko and Iroh are sort of the B story, and it's about them attempting to find new lives in secrecy within the Earth Kingdom. And as each party progresses on their own individual journey, they're all slowly led to the same location, which serves as the stage for the ultimate final showdown of the season, Ba Sing Se. Season 2 is all about build-up and payoff, and the Ba Sing Se arc is that big-ass glorious payoff that the viewer has been waiting for. The important things to note before the Ba Sing Se arc starts is that the heroes are looking for Appa, their flying bison and main source of transportation, and they believe that he might be in Ba Sing Se. But they're also trying to reach the king of Ba Sing Se because they recently learned that the Fire Nation will be weakened during the upcoming solar eclipse, and they want to try to mobilize a final strike to take the Fire Nation out. Zuko and Iroh have immigrated to Ba Sing Se to start a new life, but along the way, they met Jet, a supposed reformed villain of Season 1, who hates firebenders, and guess what Jet discovers about them before they reach the city? Once he convinces himself that Zuko and Iroh are firebenders, Jet goes on a life-or-death mission to expose them as the firebending scum that they really are. And Azula is still hot on the trail of the Avatar and her brother and uncle, but after she fails to besiege the Great Wall of Ba Sing Se, she needs to find a good backup plan to infiltrate the city. The first episode of the Ba Sing Se arc is fittingly called The City of Walls and Secrets, and it perfectly sets up the world of Ba Sing Se, as well as all of the obstacles and challenges that the characters will have to overcome while inside the city. Ba Sing Se is what's known as a false utopia, a place that seems to be heaven on earth, but all of its perceived greatness hides many dark and corrupt secrets. The 100-year-long war against the Fire Nation is treated as a fairy tale that's not to be spoken of by the people. They're completely secluded from the outside world due to the city's impenetrable wall, and despite a clear disparity in wealth between the elite and the commoners, everyone has been made to believe that if they work hard and keep their mouths shut about any issues within or outside the city, they can all have happy and enriching lives. Iroh and Zuko enter the city as low-level migrants, but Uncle Iroh quickly begins to ascend his status in the city as a renowned tea shop owner. While this is all great for Iroh, Prince Zuko still sees himself as that banished prince from the Fire Nation who needs to reclaim his honor. He doesn't want a simple and quiet life in the Earth Kingdom. He wants to regain what he lost. So this causes tension between him and Iroh. And look who just showed up in Iroh's tea shop to spice things up.
I'm tired of waiting. These two men are firebenders!
While watching Book 1, I never thought we would get Zuko vs. Jet in a dual sword fight in an Earth Kingdom tea shop, but I can't say that I'm mad about it. Jet is eventually captured by the police, or the Dai Li as they're called in Ba Sing Se, and Iroh and Zuko's charade of not being firebending royalty is free to continue. For now. The heroes, on the other hand, are finally confronted by Long Fang, the head of the Dai Li and the true mastermind behind the false utopia of Ba Sing Se. This is where Long Fang explains to them that they're welcome to stay in Ba Sing Se, but they have to keep quiet about the war. If he finds out that they're making trouble and trying to stir up any controversy, then he'll make sure that they never see Appa again. Another quick side note, shouts out to Clancy Brown, who voices Long Fang, because he killed this throughout this whole arc. Doing Long Fang's voice and also Mr. Krabs is crazy range.
Mr. Squidward! Mr. Squidward! Mr. Squidward! Mr. Squidward!
After this episode that introduces us to the Ba Sing Se arc, we get one of the best episodes of the entire series. A lot of people would call Tales of Ba Sing Se a filler episode, but it might just be the best filler episode of any show I've ever seen. It's genuinely up there with some of the best episodes of the show ever. It perfectly encapsulates the entire spectrum of what Avatar: The Last Airbender has to offer as a series by giving every major character a chance to shine in their own way. I think most people like and remember the Uncle Iroh chapter the most because, up to this point, no other episode in the series really gave him the chance to shine as the focus of the story. It was only a brief 5-minute vignette, but we still get to see so much of just what makes him the wise and kind-hearted legend that he is. Not to mention the tragic reveal of his dead son and how his inability to save him in the war was what drives him to help others. But I also really like the Katara and Toph story too, because on top of being a shining example of their bickering sister dynamic, it shows that despite their differences in personality, they both still care deeply about each other and respect one another for those differences, even if it does cause them to fight every now and then. Aang's story is funny enough, but probably the weakest of the bunch here, since it's just about Aang helping to fix up a rundown zoo in the city, and we see him instantly be reminded of Appa when he sees all the locked up animals in cages. There's not really much to mention about this part because it's mostly just Aang being his goofy self and doing his best to help people in need, so typical Aang. But then we have Sokka's story, which is similar to Aang because it's just about Sokka having some goofy side adventure, but this vignette is much more memorable because my boy was talking that
Squish squash, sling that slang! I'm always right back at you. Like my boomerang.
That's called motherfucking bars, nigga! You know nothing about that!
But after Sokka's chapter, we get Zuko's chapter. And Zuko's chapter might be my personal favorite. The more the show goes on, the more we see just how socially awkward Zuko is around other people.
Hello, Zuko here. Hello.
But this was really the first taste we got of it. Zuko goes on to have an awkward date with a girl from the city, and his discomfort with the girl mirrors his struggle to adapt and leaving his traumatic past and quest to restore his honor behind. Which is why I think the ending of him kissing his date but then quickly pulling back and telling her that he can't go any further is so well written. We don't fully know it yet, but he's thinking of May in this moment. And this girl is just more of a reminder of why he can't afford to settle down and start a new life. Even the cute moment at the end of him slamming his door but then quickly popping his head back out to tell Iroh that he had a good time is really just him masking his inner frustrations. And then the episode ends with Momo having a freaky-ass foursome with some weird mini panther-looking monsters. Is this what Momo does when the heroes are out fighting for their lives? Damn, good for Momo. He also ends up finding Appa's paw print in the ground, which perfectly leads into the next episode that's all about Appa and what's happened to him since he was taken away in the desert. I think one of Avatar's greatest accomplishments is getting the audience to care so deeply about animal characters who never actually speak a lick of dialogue outside of grunts and squeaks. Even without Momo or Appa ever saying a word, you could probably describe their personalities and character traits down to a T. The Appa's Lost Days episode is basically just 20 plus minutes of animal abuse. And if you like animals, this is probably a hard watch for you. I would probably throw this episode up there with some of the saddest episodes in the show. Tragic abuse of an animal aside, it is cool to see Appa encounter all of the different enemies and other key characters that the heroes encountered since losing him at the halfway point of season 2, but just at different times of the story. The main story significance of this episode is the Kyoshi warriors from season 1 randomly find Appa in a barn, and then, even more randomly, they're found by Azula, Mei, and Ty Lee. Appa flees the scene while the Kyoshi warriors attempt to hold off Azula and her team, and the result of this fight will be extremely important later in the season. Appa eventually ends up in Ba Sing Se, but he's almost immediately taken hostage by Long Fang and the Dai Li, and they trap him in Lake Laogai. Hey, that's the name of the next episode. Lake Laogai is an episode from Avatar that has had one of the most indelible and long-lasting impacts. I remember watching this episode as a kid and thinking, are they allowed to show this on Nickelodeon? Like seriously, this episode gets into some really weird and heavy. The plot of this episode is that Team Avatar run into Jet, who, the last time we saw him, was being taken hostage by the Dai Li for attacking Iroh and Zuko. He's now back topside in the city, but has no memory of how he actually got there, or that he came there with his 2 remaining crew members, Smellerbee and Longshot. Somehow, Sokka is able to find out that Jet was brainwashed, with no prior knowledge that brainwashing was even possible.
Jet's been brainwashed. That's crazy. It can't be.
Whatever, just ignore it. And then Jet remembers that the last thing he was told by the Dai Li agent was that he was taking a trip to Lake Laogai. This also connects with the strange happening of the heroes having multiple handlers named Ju Di, who both acted like mindless, if not very polite, zombies. Team Avatar and Team Jet find Lake Laogai's location and end up running into Long Fang and the Dai Li. This is where they see the proof of how the Dai Li have been brainwashing the people of Ba Sing Se, or more specifically, anyone within the city who causes trouble. This showdown ends up costing Jet his life, and yet another tragic scene. Damn, there's a lot of those in book 2. The most memorable moments of Jet's death for me are Longshot finally speaking for the first time.
There's no time. Just go. We'll take care of him. He's our leader.
And Toph's line after we just found out earlier in this episode that she can tell if people are lying by reading the vibrations in their body, and Jet tells Katara that he's gonna be okay.
I'll be fine.
He's lying.
That's so unbelievably sad.
Jet is an interesting character to look at in the world of Avatar because he's one of the few morally gray characters in the show. Most characters are either villains or heroes, but Jet is one of the few characters that took being good too far and became a villain because of it. They didn't really need to bring him back and redeem him in book 2. I felt like his arc in book 1 and that one episode was good enough, and they definitely didn't need to kill him off, but damn, what a ballsy move to do so, especially in a show whose main audience at the time was nerdy 10-year-olds. This all concludes with Team Avatar finally being reunited with Appa, and after all of the pain and heartache that Aang and Appa went through while separated, I always really love this line from Aang when they finally find each other again.
I missed you, buddy.
So simple, but delivered so perfectly. But that's just the Team Avatar side of the story. The Zuko and Iroh story also involved a little trip to Lake Laogai. At the same time that the heroes were doing their thing, Zuko had found the posters that Aang was leaving around the city, asking if anyone knew where Appa was. And he decided this was his big chance to finally catch Aang and, regain his honor. So Prince Zuko once again dons the blue mask and becomes edgy Batman to put his plan of stealing Appa into motion. He also finds out about Lake Laogai and arrives there just before Team Avatar does. But right when he's about to take Appa, Uncle Iroh shows up to give Zuko one of the greatest speeches in television history.
I know my own destiny, Uncle.
Is it your own destiny? Or is it a destiny someone else has tried to force on you? It's time for you to look inward and begin asking yourself the big questions. Who are you? And what do you want?
That's called motherfucking bars, nigga! You know nothing about that!
Zuko was at a crossroads of destiny, and he needs to make his decision. Is he going to follow in his father and sister's footsteps and be the bad guy? Or does he want to follow in his mother and his uncle's footsteps and be the good guy? That's an oversimplification, but you get the point. It sounds like an easy choice, but it's not easy when you've been brainwashed by your family lineage and country to be the bad guy all your life. Zuko ultimately decides to let Appa go and return to Aang, but Zuko isn't sure that he's made the right decision in that moment. The Earth King episode is basically the calm before the storm episode, and it does a great job of setting up the final showdown that will happen next. It reinforces Aang's love for Katara in this scene here, shows that the Dai Li are still loyal to Long Fang even after Team Avatar exposed him for being the corrupt and manipulative scumbag that he is, and it even drops the stinger at the end with Azula and her friends pretending to be the Kyoshi warriors and how they have now fully infiltrated the city. See, I told you that Suki fight was important. The best part about this episode, though, is Zuko struggling with the decision he made in Lake Laogai. I don't know why, but there's something so hilarious to me about someone falling physically ill, hallucinating, and questioning their entire existence just because they did a good deed for once.
I thrive off negativity. Anything negative, I'm for it.
But the episode ends with our heroes believing that they had won by defeating and exposing Long Fang, informing the Earth King about the war and the plan to attack the Fire Nation, and finally finding Appa. So once they get word that they're all being summoned in different places by various people, they decide to go their separate ways for now. But little do they know, things are about to get much, much worse. I mentioned before that Tales of Ba Sing Se is one of the best episodes of Avatar: The Last Airbender ever. But The Guru might actually be my favorite episode of the show. And it's all because of Guru Patek. I always liked Avatar before watching this episode, but I'm not exaggerating when I say these scenes of Guru Patek talking Aang through the process of opening his chakras in order to better understand himself and his relation to the world at large changed my life. I was only an 11 or 12-year-old kid who had never really been exposed to any forms of Easternized religion or philosophy. So to be randomly bombarded with such a beautiful and eloquent explanation and illustration of core Hindu and Buddhist beliefs on a Thursday afternoon was a lot to take in. But it fascinated the fuck out of me all the same. I used to watch Guru Patek's explanation of love being energy that never dies but instead transforms into new love all the time when I was a kid.
But love is a form of energy, and it swirls all around us. The air nomad's love for you has not left this world. It is still inside of your heart and is reborn in the form of new love.
Not to mention that sequence of Toph teaching herself metal bending while Patek explains how the people of the planet and the four elements are all connected. There are so many important life lessons to be learned from all of these scenes with him and Aang, but the most important to the plot of the show is the final chakra that Aang has to open. The last step in Aang's pursuit to controlling the Avatar state and becoming the most OP motherfucker the world has ever known is to learn to let Katara go. Now, this is a hard concept to grasp for grown-ass adults, let alone a 12-year-old boy like Aang, so it's completely understandable why Aang refuses to do this. To live a normal life, we all need attachment to people, places, and things that tether us to reality. But to be extraordinary, you have to be willing to sacrifice certain things, if not everything. Most people don't need to be extraordinary. Most people just want to be normal and happy. But some people, for better or for worse, need to be extraordinary for the betterment of others. And to those people who have to bear that burden, like Aang, sooner or later they have to learn to detach themselves from regular society to achieve the great things that they're destined for. Again, how the f was this airing on Nickelodeon? But Aang isn't mature enough to understand what Guru Patek is saying at this moment, and when given the ultimatum of becoming an all-powerful god or saving the girl he likes, he chooses Katara. And that's a real Sophie's choice when you're 12 years old. The finale of Book 2 is called The Crossroads of Destiny, and it's one of the best season finales of any show that I've ever seen. I know I keep saying that a lot, but I was serious when I said that I fucking love Book 2 of Avatar. But we've come this far in the video, and I've yet to really discuss Azula much. And that's because I think she deserves her own section of this video. Prince Zuko and General Zhao were good villains for Book 1, but they both lack something that Azula has in spades. And it's this one thing that puts Azula on another pedestal in comparison. Simply put, Princess Azula is about that action. How many times while watching Book 1 were you actually scared for the heroes when they had to fight Zuko or Zhao? Not many, if I had to guess. I know I never really respected them as serious threats. Compare that to Azula. Throughout Book 2, every time the heroes encountered Azula, it felt like they were lucky to escape with their lives. At no point in Book 2 does Azula come off as weak, or incompetent, or remorseful, or unwilling to, or unable to fight. She's a cold-blooded, unfeeling killer, both physically and mentally, and one of the best villains ever written. The way she's able to beat Long Fang in his own game of manipulation within days of even entering the city of Ba Sing Se is ridiculous. And that final line that she crushes him with.
You've beaten me at my own game.
Don't flatter yourself. You were never even a player.
But Azula ends up taking control of the Dai Li, capturing Zuko and capturing Katara after pretending to be the Kyoshi warriors to gain the Earth King's trust. And again, she does this within days of infiltrating the city. Meanwhile, Toph escapes from her captors and Aang pulls Sokko away from his first quality time he's had with his dad in years to go save his sister. Final side note of the video, I love the scene where Iroh breathes fire for the first time. It doesn't add much to the story, but it's another great moment for the old goat. The Katara and Zuko scene in the prison chamber has always been one that's been very interesting to me. You can tell from earlier clips in the episode that Zuko is truly leaning towards becoming a good man, but being trapped in a prison cell with Katara forces him to confront his shame at all the terrible things he did while trying to capture Aang. But even after their heart-to-heart, where it really seems like Zuko is going to change, and then even after Iroh and him have another heart-to-heart about how he needs to change, all it takes is one speech from Azula about family and honor, and what does this do when the chips are down and everything's on the line? He chooses this infuriating decision by Zuko leads to one of the best fight scenes in the whole series, with Aang and Katara fighting their asses off against Azula, Zuko, and the Dai Li. When Katara is cornered and Aang realizes that he has to turn to the Avatar state to save her, he finally understands Patek's words from earlier, and he learns to let her go so that he can do what he has to do to save her. Aang is finally able to open the gate of the final chakra, and just when the dramatic music starts to rise heavy and he's about to save the day,
I thrive off negativity. Anything negative, I'm for it.
If there was any doubt in my mind before I saw Azula shoot Aang with lightning mid-transformation that she was the illest villain of all time, all that shit thrown out the window after that. She is the only villain I have ever seen that said, "F your transformation, I'm ending this now." Aang falls lifeless into Katara's arms, but thanks to Iroh sacrificing himself, they're able to escape the underground prison and flee the city on Appa's back. Katara saves Aang's life with the water from the North Pole, but Ba Sing Se, the last bastion of freedom from the Fire Nation's reach, has finally fallen. The heroes have lost. Zuko has chosen the side of evil, and that's how the season ends. And my first reaction to this as a 12-year-old kid was,
This is bullshit.
That's some bullshit.
This is bullshit.
I couldn't believe it. I had seen shows where the heroes lost every now and then, but I had never seen a story end with the heroes losing just flat out. Now I had to wait 2 more years for book 3, and the last thing I saw was all my favorite characters get mopped up because Prince Zuko's punk ass. But my second reaction was, that might have been the most intense and captivating 30 minutes of television I ever watched. So let's go down the list of some of the most important things that the Ba Sing Se arc did. The Ba Sing Se arc solidified Azula as one of the best villains ever, taught me that every story doesn't need a happy ending to be great, introduced me to Buddhist philosophy, and left me practically salivating for book 3. The Ba Sing Se arc completely elevated the show, and from this point on into book 3, every episode of the show just felt more and more monumental in scale and importance. It felt like a story where anything could happen, and it constantly kept the audience guessing. It's one of the best examples of how to do a slow build and big payoff in storytelling, and that's why I genuinely believe that the Ba Sing Se arc is one of the best arcs of all time, and definitely the best arc in Avatar: The Last Airbender. Oh, goddamn, it has been a while since I did a video like this long, this extensive. But it was cool, it was fun. Avatar is a show that, like I've said, I've wanted to talk about for a while, but just didn't know exactly how to make a video about it. But I kind of just made this as a one, like I said, because I wanted to make a video about it, but to test the waters, see if people were interested in hearing more about Avatar from me. If they wanted more Avatar videos, like I'd definitely be down to make more. I have other ideas for videos that I want to make, topics I want to cover, characters, analysis, episodes, all that kind of stuff. Similar to how, I've made a lot of videos about the Boondocks and Boondocks adjacent things. I don't know how people really feel about Avatar, in general. Like, I know some things, like a lot of people don't like Legend of Korra, even though I kind of like Legend of Korra. Everyone hates the M. Night Shyamalan movie, which I also hate the M. Night Shyamalan movie. I didn't know if people also shared my love for season 2, or if they thought book 3 or book 1 was better, anything like that. So I'm always reading comments. I'm always trying to see what, the community is thinking, what people have to say about these videos and the topics I cover. So yeah, I'll talk to you in the next one, and it should be coming soon.